I was reading Stephen Johnson, and I was reading about him, reading his book primarily for ideas about this talk. And he was talking about the biggest idea of all, which was life. How did life evolve, and what were the things that were required for it to be possible? And if you look at the mediums within which life can evolve, basically there's gas, there's liquid, and there's solid. And he was saying how with gas has a great many qualities because it's active, many things collide. It's always in action. It never ever is still. And so there is a great collection of ideas within a gas, if you like. The downside of it is that it's unstable. The things never grip together for very long. Nothing really has an organizing core to gas, so it's always busy on to the next thing. So it's very unlikely that something as stable as life could ever begin in something as unstable as that. And then you have solid. And for obvious reasons, life can't evolve in a solid because nothing changes. It becomes what it is. It's the ultimate concrete-filled box. And so most scientists are in agreement that water is pretty much the only thing that life could have evolved in. Now, not just liquid, but water, because water has certain qualities. One is it's just about the most stable liquid there is. Across a range of temperatures, it's able to remain flexible, fluid, and yet still be ultimately malleable. And also, it's a great dissolver of things. So it dissolves gases, and it can also wear away solids. So it's likely that for life to evolve, it needed that fluidity where new connections are made so things can evolve, but enough solidity for it to evolve and have the time to do so. Does that kind of make sense? So I thought that was kind of interesting. Something was in my mind at the time about Quest and about therapy, and I suddenly realized that that was a metaphor for what is on my mind a lot, about how do we evolve Quest in the best possible, how do we keep the core elements of Quest going, and how do we keep promoting cognitive hypnotherapy in the spirit that I wanted it for. This is an interesting thing about how the minute a big company gains market control, they stop innovating. They say, we've got this, and then they stop. If you think about Kodak, can you imagine living in a world where Kodak went bankrupt when you were a kid? Didn't seem possible, but they stopped innovating. They weren't able to keep up. Now, most of you will have heard at some point me quoting about Be Water. This is from another great guy to read, Jonah Lehrer. Wonderful writer. And when I read this sentence, the two things came together. They were in different books, they came together. This idea of us being able to need to be close to chaos, not to be disconnected from certainty, but to remain fluid to both. We need spaces that surprise us, was an important thing for me. Because then, of course, dear old Bruce Lee pops up, which I've been banging on about for years, about as therapists, we need to be water, to be as flexible as we possibly can be. And I thought I'd explored that metaphor to the end result, and I hadn't at all. That actually, when we're looking at what I want Quest to be and what I want cognitive hypnotherapy to be, it comes down to this again. If you look at the profession that we're in, there are elements of therapy that are solid, that have erected walls around them, who are saying this is the way that it is, that are not evolving or changing or growing. They've just become concrete, and there's going to be no conditions for innovation. At the other end of the field, you have the kind of fluffier end of alternative stuff, and the great advantage of them is that they are innovative. They probably generate more ideas in the field than anybody else. All kinds of stuff comes out of that, and they tend to be disorganized and aren't able to remain coherent for very long. They begin a new therapy, and then someone has an idea about how that therapy does something else, and off it goes. So it's in a constant state of chaos, and it has benefits. Just like there are good practices within the solid that are worth water wearing away and being incorporated into it. And for us as Quest, we need to be veering on the edge of chaos so we can absorb the ideas from that end. And also, we need to be rubbing up against the mainstream so that we don't miss anything that they're doing. We don't disregard them just because it's solid. And if we can keep this idea of being water indefinitely, then we'll never get bogged down. And there's always going to be a pressure, because we'll always have Questies who have come from the mainstream, who have got used to the boundaries of their box being that this is the way that it is and this is the way that it should be. And so they will be pulling us towards more concreteness. And then we'll have guys who've joined us from the more alternative end, and they will be lured back to a greater degree of chaos. And that's just part of the thing that makes us creative. And we just have to have a tolerance for us to remain fluid. There's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's just our way of being, which is that there's nothing true and nothing stays the same. And that's what came out of reading Jonah Lehrer simultaneously with Stephen Johnson, which is another thing. Do not read one book at a time. I mean it. It's research has shown if you want to be more creative, multi-book. And I don't mean left eye, right eye, but, and luckily for me, I've been doing this for years, that I read a book, I get bored with how far I've gone with that, I could do the housework, or I could read another book. And so I just flip to a different book. Sometimes it's a nonsense book, you know, a fantasy book, then a sensible one to kind of keep me going. Sometimes it will be just two completely different sensible books. But you do find that something from one book sometimes just trickles over into this one as well. So this for me is a thing I'm going to keep in my head forever as far as Quest is concerned, and lay down as the principal thing we're always looking to do. We don't want to be anything other than water at any point in time.